Hi, my name is Travis Otwell, and I'm going to be doing a study of practice comparing OnRamp's college algebra with other peer-reviewed articles concerning teaching quadratic functions. I have entitled my project, How to Look at a Parabola. What is OnRamps? It's a University of Texas created program where students are able to take a UT level course in high school and get an opportunity to earn credit. It's a dual enrollment program where the students have a high school course they're taking and a college course they're taking, where me, the instructor on the high school side, assign all of their high school, excuse me. How does OnRamps work? It is a dual enrollment program where students simultaneously have a high school side and a college side of their course, and I, as the high school instructor, assign their high school grades and assignments, and then there's a college portion as well. The college portion is completely graded by people at UT, the instructor of record, and then I grade everything on the high school side. And at the end of the day, the students are able to choose whether or not to accept the credit on the college side. So they gain the benefit of a UT level course with no risk. I mean, they're able to not take the credit if they don't want it. To assess Orca, I decided to look through the lens of the Eddy article's key ideas of algebra, the variables, functions, patterns, modeling, multiple representations, and technology, and just talk about how those popped up in the unit, specifically talking about quadratic functions. To start us off, we'll look at the key idea of variables. So in the Orca text, it does address the uses of mathematical symbols and notation in different contexts. As you can see in figure 1, they explicitly note that a is a parameter from the standard form of a quadratic. Students aren't only expected to solve for x, but other parameters given maybe an x and a y, or other parameters and just different properties of the parabola. Students also have to solve for the parameters of standard form when given vertex form and vice versa, so they can't just choose one of their favorite methods to learn how to solve a quadratic. They must be well versed in all of them and take what they've been given in the problem and produce the corresponding solution. Concerning the key idea of functions, students are given a primary representation of a function, such as an equation, a graph, or a table, and they're always being asked to find some other primary representation of that corresponding function. So Orca is really good at challenging the students to know all the different representations of a function and how they can all work together in order to find some other corresponding representation. As I was reading through peer-reviewed material, I found that the way Orca presents the quadratics material aligns very closely with many of the peer-reviewed articles that I had read. In the Sanchez Connecting Parabolas and Quadratic Functions article, the goal of the activity laid out in the article was to use a piece of wax paper to construct a parabola, then use that to derive the formula for a quadratic in terms of focal length. Orca also covers the same material, just without the wax paper portion of the lesson. Sanchez concludes her article with a statement and a quote that I feel really summarizes really the overarching goals of OnRamp's college algebra. She says, "We believe the challenges students faced were productive and aligned with best practices in mathematics education. For example, the authors of Principles to Actions, NCTM 2014, explain that effective mathematics teaching supports students in struggling productively as they learn mathematics. Such instruction embraces a view of students' struggles as opportunities for delving more deeply into understanding the mathematical structure of problems and relationships among mathematical ideas instead of simply seeking correct solutions." And once again, I feel like that really does summarize the overall goal of OnRamp's college algebra. Another article I read was Clifford's Complete the What article, and in the article, it's basically a lesson about a geometric representation of completing the square. And in it, she says the common inability of students to understand completing the square as more than just a calculation is remedied through the concrete solution process of finding the missing part of the side length of the square, adding depth and context to their answer. This idea of a geometric representation is also addressed specifically in Orca's curriculum, It's played out a little differently, but there is an exercise concerning a geometric representation of completing the square and factoring a difference of squares. Concerning the key idea of patterns, it doesn't explicitly talk about it in Unit 5 with quadratics, but later in Unit 10, it talks about function patterns where you can look at the outputs of a function, and if the second differences are the same, that tells you it's a quadratic function. They use that data to find the function that fits the given table. Once they find that it's the second difference, they can go back and look at the table to find its corresponding quadratic equation. Also, just as I've been teaching it, I've tried to help the students see the patterns in vertex form and transformations of quadratics, because if they're able to tie those two things together, it really is able to solidify a lot of the learning. And if you're able to find the vertex of a parabola, that really does give you all the properties that are necessary for really diving more deeply into whatever context you're dealing with. Concerning the key ideas of modeling and multiple representations, I found that in Orca's curriculum, they're always together. It's never really like, this is about modeling or this is multiple representations. It's really amazing how they've really intertwined them together. As seen in figures 10 and 11, Orca really makes the students dig into applications of quadratics, so parabolic motion, given a graph that represents a model, what's an equation, given an equation that represents the model. Another idea I stumbled upon while researching was how the quadratic formula can really tell you a lot about the parabola. And in both Edwards and Hawthorne's articles, they talk about highlighting the significance of different parts of the quadratic formula to highlight the properties about the parabola in relation to its graph. This could easily be expanded upon in the Orca curriculum to give more meaning to the quadratic formula. In the text, they do address different parts of the quadratic formula, how the left side talks about the axis of symmetry, but there's just heavy implications of what the right side represents, and it's not really explicit. So I think they really could dig a little more into that, and that's shown in figure 12. To conclude his article, Edwards says, understanding the quadratic formula is a critical goal of high school algebra. Not simplifying the formula completely leaves it in a form that will be more meaningful for students. We believe that when students understand what components of the quadratic formula mean, they're better equipped to apply the formula and understand and interpret the meaning of the resulting solutions. And I think that the Orca text is really set up to dig more into explicitly what both parts of the quadratic formula mean, rather than implying the significance of both parts to the reader. Concerning the key idea of technology, this is where I feel Orca is lacking in the curriculum as it relates to those key ideas. It is mostly left up to instructors' discretion. To expand on that a little bit, students have to use the platform Canvas, which I think is really great actually, because they're going to have to do that at the college level wherever they go. As you can see in figure 13, the students have to navigate an online platform to see announcements about the course. They can access quizzes, grades, all that kind of good stuff. In figure 14, I just showed a shot of how the teacher can actually really customize assessments and quizzes to really let their students get the most out of the content. And in figures 15 through 17, I just tried to show how you're not stuck with only multiple choice formatting. You could do check the boxes or fill in the blanks. One thing instructors can do though is they can add modules into Canvas that do promote learning of the content. That just takes more time, and that would take more time for the student outside of class in order to go access that module. In summary, I think that the quadratics unit of On-Ramp's college algebra really helps develop students' algebraic thinking and the key 6 ideas of algebra as proposed by the Eddy article.